Hey guys, what's up? This is the spoiler stuff for Nocebo. Now, again, directed by Lorcan Finnegan. Hopefully, you've by this time maybe have seen the movie, or you've actually listened to the interview with Lorcan Finnegan, so you might have an idea of what this movie is about. You know, the fashion designer played by Ava Green. She's having all these illnesses, and she believes she has a disease, something that's ailing her, and this sickness that she has alienates her from her husband, long-suffering husband, played by Mark Strong, and her daughter. It's hard for her as well to bond with her daughter. In fact, throughout most of the movie, she is very unsympathetic. And pretty much I think, yeah, she there's not too much of a saving grace about her until she starts finding some kind of friendship with the nanny played by Chai Fonacier or Fonacier. I don't even know how to pronounce her name, but I'm just going to say Fonacier. Chai, I do know that's her first name. That is how you pronounce her first name. Chai is a Filipino actress who plays the nanny in Nocebo. Now, at this point, this is spoiler territory, so you can leave now if you haven't seen the movie, or if you don't mind, you can just keep on going. Now, like I said in my mini review of this, Nocebo, is it's more of a social drama and exploration of capitalist issues more than it being a horror thriller. And I don't mind that. I liked it was scary enough or entertaining enough in a visceral fashion for for me to enjoy all of the layerings behind it, because ultimately this is about a woman, a Filipino woman who worked in a factory somewhere near Cebu in the Philippines. And what happened, it's the spoiler is she's very obviously very attached to her daughter, and her daughter gets trapped in a fire in this factory while her mother, again played by Chai Fonacier, she's out getting some coconut water for her daughter because the conditions in that factory are horrible. And they are horrible because these conditions are set by the fashion designer played by Eva Green, who plays Christine. Okay. So what happens is you realize this whole idea, this whole thing with Nocebo is this nanny is out to seek vengeance against the seek revenge for her daughter's death. And what she's going to do is she goes, I'm assuming this takes place in London or England, or I don't really know where it takes place. They're a British couple, I believe. And she decides to go and really, yeah, pretty much kill her through the mysticism or spiritual elements and haunted paranormal situations that Christine, the nanny, I mean, Diana, the nanny, can do. Diana has a power of actually communicating with animals, and that actually puts her in good stead regarding the end of the movie, and as well as terrorizing Christine, played by Eva Green. Now, at the end of the movie, Christine is put in a very dream state where Diana puts Christine in a dream state in the factory. Christine is so delirious right now, she believes she's actually in the factory that was set ablaze. And at the end, it's pretty interesting because the dream state and reality merges as Diana ends up just getting immolation. She just gets burned up to a crisp. And so Diana finally has her revenge. And instead of going back to the Philippines to her husband and celebrating in the revenge scheme, Diana had always planned on dying after this revenge plot was met its fruition. So at the end of the movie, we have Diana climbing up to the roof of the home. It's a sort of a mini mansion. It's a really big home. And while the daughter of Christine is looking upwards, and she sees the nanny, whom by the time of the ending of the movie, she's the young girl bonds with the nanny, and she doesn't want any harm to come to the nanny, even though her mother is dead. Right. But anyways, the nanny jumps off the cliff, and not jumps off the cliff, jumps out outside off the roof of the house, and she splat on the floor. She's bleeding, and immediately dead. Out from her mouth comes a little chick, a baby chick that comes out of her mouth, out of Diana's mouth, and that chick ends up going into the mouth willingly by the daughter. The young girl opens her mouth to have the chick in in her mouth, and that's a very memorable moment, which is very really I really enjoyed it. And it's sort of some kind of tradition in this mysticism in some part of the Philippines, I guess. Through I don't know if it's tradition, I don't know anything about that. obviously what's interesting is Lorcan Finnegan and his co-writer, and his writer Garrett Shanley, they went actually, if you've seen from the interview, they went to Cebu. They spent some time for some research regarding the dark arts, mysticism in that part of the Philippines. So I just thought that was really interesting. This transference of that little baby chick goes from the dead nanny into the young girl, and at the end, the young girl, at least I interpreted it, she's not haunted by the spirit of the dead nanny, but in fact, she actually inhabits the power to communicate with animals, and she has some kind of supernatural element in her moving forward. And I saw that even though obviously her mother is dead, because of that revenge plot, at least the young daughter won't be as self-centered as her mother, and maybe she will move on forward with this power from the Philippines. That is the end of Nocebo. And what's interesting is, if you've seen the movie, or if you've seen it and have not stayed until the end credits, please go back and check the end credits, because it says towards the end credits, justice for the Kentex workers. I believe that's what it says, justice for the Kentex workers. And that is based on an incident which happened, I believe, in the Kentex factory or something like that. And about at least 73 Filipinos were killed in the factory near Cebu. Okay. And this narrative is actually inspired by the deaths of these factory workers, when it was an unnecessary death in this Kentex worker place. So it was a big scandal and obvious tragedy. And that tragedy was one of the inspirations behind the making of Nocebo. So what's interesting, yes, is Nocebo a bloody, gory, scary, scarefest kind of thing? The answer is no. It's more of a straight up thriller, which ultimately the heart of it is more of a social drama on how to treat people, the perils of actually having capitalism as your main, I guess, source of passion, without actually thinking of your wonderful neighbor next door. So it has some really interesting message, and it's not too preachy, in my opinion. So Nocebo, I forgot to say this in the actual interview, I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Would love to hear what you guys think of Lorcan Finnegan's take on the ending of his film, and enjoy. I've been blabbering too much, and yeah, this is my first spoiler in a while, and more to come. All right, guys, take care, enjoy it, and tell us what you think of Nocebo. I hope one of you guys actually have seen this movie or plan to see it. All right, bye. Logan, my final question, it's going to be a spoiler question. I'm going to have people actually watch this film in our podcast community. I really want to talk about the ending. Can you just talk about the source material that it's inspired by as well? But then on top of that, I really loved how seemingly a horrific moment where the death of a woman leads to a transference of humanity to the child. It's inferred that the child will grow up being more just attuned to the land, and more importantly, the humanity in general. I just thought that was so moving. Can you just hit those 2 points before you go? And I apologize for the long question. So
yeah, sure. So while we're doing the research into this, and I do remember at the time being in the news on BBC, there was a factory fire in Manila in 2015, the Kentex factory fire, where 72 people, I think it actually ended up being 74 by the time people ended up dying in hospital and everything. It was a terrible tragedy where mostly women working in this flip-flop factory, they call them slippers there, ended up being trapped in the building, and a fire started and they couldn't escape. But I mean, that isn't unique to the Philippines. That happened in Thailand as well, actually, in the toy factory. And it happened in Bangladesh. It's happened, it's a common side effect of exploitation, essentially. So that was one of the kind of provocations for making the film. And we actually ended up shooting in not far at all from where that actually happened. Is more or less the same block. So there was a lot of sensitivity around how we were going to do that. We weren't allowed to use black smoke from smoke machines in case other factories got I think it was the owner of the whole factory block that we shot in ended up being offended or worried about the press arriving or anything like that. And yeah, so the transference of the spirit, I mean, we'd heard about the in the Philippines, in Visayan folklore, there's the Ongo, which is this witch spirit. You know, it's kind of an amalgamation of lots of different elements of what could be described as a witch, it's they can turn into a dog. That's why the dog's in the film. A little bit like you know, our witch might turn into a hare to as shapeshift to watch people as a familiar. But the Ongo, it starts as a bird. It's like an ancient character that gets passed along. So when an Ongo dies, the little black bird will crawl out of their mouth. And we'd heard about this, but then this guy Joel, who's the tribal chief of the Ati tribe in Cebu, he was brilliant, amazing storyteller. We sat down with him, and he was telling us exactly what it looks like, how it walks, how it's all black and wet, and that it will only the Ongo can't die, the host can't die until the bird has found a new host. So he also actually told us about the communicating with the dead through putting ashes outside a door and closing the door, and then you can speak to the dead, and in the morning you'll see their footprints in the ash, which was a nice visual way of speaking about people who died in a fire. But yeah, so the ending of the film then, where the Ongo passes from Diana to Bob's. Yeah, I mean, I like to leave that open to interpretation because it can mean a lot of things. People have asked about that at Q&As after the film, whether it's, you know, cultural inclusion, whether it's Bob's is going to be part of something bigger, which is then beneficial to society, which I quite like. And, you know, part of the film was also inspired by the fact that there's this weird cycle with Filipino nannies being, you know, going from the Philippines to places like Hong Kong, Australia, the UK, Ireland, and working as foreign domestic workers, minding other people's kids, while then having to send money home for someone to look after their kids, with such a strange cycle that is the result of this kind of capitalist society. So Diana minding Bob's having the soul of the Ongo insider is quite an interesting sort of conclusion to the story.
Yeah, Lorcan, thank you so much for your time. Really loved your film. So
all right, thanks, man. It's great talking to you.